Hey kids, Lorlock here. Today we're going to be learning about time travel, so we're going to try to figure out a way so we can go back in time and save Harambe. Now, what would you do if you found out that time travel is possible? Would you go back in time and fistfight Gandhi? Maybe you'd go back and invest in stocks or bet on some sports, Back to the Future style. Or maybe you would just go back in time to get an old computer. Well, that's actually kind of where it leads into our story today, because we're going to learn about the time traveler, John Titor. The year is 1998, and the show Coast to Coast AM radio program has just begun its broadcast in the early hours of the morning. This show normally was a show about paranormal and supernatural things ranging from aliens to ghosts to even cryptid critters. The host, Art Bell, was also the founder of the long-running program. He opened this episode up to callers who claimed to be from the future. A good chunk of the show was spent asking these quote-unquote time travelers about years to come. One, although, stuck out among the others. And it was sent of all things via fax. Art read it aloud to his listeners, and it was the beginning of a rabbit hole. A rabbit hole that would last long into the future.
Dear Art, I had to fax when I heard other time travelers calling in from any time past the year 2500 AD. Please let me explain. Time travel was invented in 2034. Offshoots of certain successful fusion reactor research allowed scientists at CERN to produce the world's first contained singularity engine. The basic design involves rotating singularities inside a magnetic field. By altering the speed and direction of rotation, you can travel both forward and backward in time.
Now this fact kind of gives like a breakdown on how time travel works. It kind of works similar to like how multiverse theory works. Now, he says when you travel back in time, you go back in time, you're still traveling on your original line. See? Line. That thing. But he says when you're traveling in the time machine, generally what you do is you create a new separate universe. So even though you did go back in time, you did just create a divergent universe. Now, to get back to your original timeline here, you have to, according to our traveler friend, you have to travel 1 millisecond before you travel back in time. So, if you are familiar with, like, Futurama, there is a Futurama episode where something similar to this happens. Except they don't create separate universes, they just travel on a cyclical line. See, now, you can, according to our traveler friend, cause all sorts of chaos in this timeline. And then just go back to yours. He even states that in some timelines, he's actually taken himself along for the ride. I'm also realizing this is the first time that I've actually shown my bottom half, so take it in, guys. One of the other things he also says, too, is he says that Y2K becomes a disaster. Now, remember, this is 1998, and we're not off to a great start here. This time traveler's message stood out from all the others during that 4-hour program. It stood out versus the people calling in who sounded like they were clearly just making things up on the fly. It could be the fact that his message was directly relaying fears of the time, like Y2K, or that it came from a confident, well-spoken voice like Art's. Regardless, if this was the only time it happened, our story would probably have ended here. And this video honestly would have been actually pretty short. This story sunk into the minds and hearts of the listeners, echoing 2 words: what if? However, things really got moving when a user by the name of Time Travel 01 posted to the Time Travel Institute forums. Time Travel forums seem like a reliable source. Our time traveler friend would reply mostly to a user simply just going by the name of Paul. Paul would post quite a long post in regards to some ideas on time travel. Our time travel friend would then reply stating that Paul is right on the money, especially saying Paul is right on the money. I was just about to give up any hope on knowing who Tipler or Kerr was in this world line. By the way, number 2 is the correct answer, and the basics for time travel start at CERN in about a year and end in 2034 with the first time machine built by General Electric. Too bad we can't post pictures, or I'd show you. Now, once again, on a different set of forums, oddly enough on the Art Bell forums, Post to Post, love the name by the way, he would make similar posts in the early 2000s, and a lot of reliable sources of information, as forums never lie. He would post under the name John Titor. He posted pics of his quote-unquote time machine, which was installed in a 1967 Chevy Corvette, along with a grainy picture of using the machine to bend a laser beam and several clearly legitimate machine schematics. He would also post the following. Greetings. I am a time traveler from the year 2036. I am on my way home after getting an IBM 5100 computer system from the year 1975. My time machine is a stationary mass temporal displacement unit manufactured by General Electric. The unit is powered by 2 top-spin dual positive singularities that produce a standard offset Tipler sinusoid. I will be happy to post pictures of the unit. Again, he explained how going back in time creates a separate universe, so even if you do go back to do something, that same timeline will be a little bit different. So, hypothetically, let's say you went back to debunk if Finland is real or not, and return here, it really wouldn't affect your world. It's like the meme where if you travel back in time and you move a chair and you go back to your current time and everything changes. Except John Titor here is proving everything wrong. Again, according to John, if you go back in time and you change something, you just create a separate timeline that doesn't affect your current world line. So hypothetically, if I move this stool, nothing will happen. What the fuck? Damn it. Ugh, 2D again. Oh well. Now, people on the forum saw this as an opportunity to pull a Back to the Future, if you will. Ask for Super Bowl winners, horse track results, stock tips, all the fun stuff. Now, real quick, without Googling, can you tell me what the winning Powerball numbers were for April 15th, 2012? Do you know the exact day that GameStop stocks are going to jump to their peak? You don't know, do you? Well, why would a time traveler know these random facts? Also, there is a theory that lotteries exist only to catch time travelers, so why would John want to get busted for an obvious trap? To avoid issues like this, and not to waste John's time, he set up some guidelines. 1. I will not disclose any information that will cause someone to personally gain by its knowledge. This means no stocks or sports tips. 2. I will not disclose any detailed information that would allow someone to avoid death by probability. This means no earthquake or bomb info. 3. I will not disclose any information that may compromise any future action by individual people or threaten their family and well-being. I will not disclose names or events associated with those individuals. And even with all this information and all these predictions, he still said a lot of wrong things, like he said that the Olympics would cease to be in 2004. Sure. 0 for 2, buddy. I mean, the Olympics are kind of boring after all. I mean, it could be used to spice it up. I mean, put like landmines in the volleyball courts, maybe sharks in the pool, wolves chasing you for the 100-meter dash. NBC, I'm open for pitches. I mean, to be fair, the Olympics in John's world were canceled due to civil unrest, which that's incredibly vague, but in this 2024, that's definitely understandable. The civil unrest that John went on about was a lot of government issues. Some of it was saying like urban versus rural. A lot of people fleeing urban and cities because of the government, which I yet? The year 2008 was a general date by which everyone will realize the world they thought they were living in was over. The Civil War in the United States will start in 2004. I would describe it as having a Waco-type event every month that steadily got worse. This conflict will consume everyone in the US by 2012 and end in 2015 with a very short World War III. Just a short, fun World War III. Sure. From what John Titor says about the time in World War III, the reason why it was so short is because it was basically full-on nuclear. Fallout straight up. Nuke Town. Big boom. Also, I don't remember Fallout IRL, so over 3 on predictions, buddy. Now, one of the reasons why John Titor was even here in the first place, according to him, is that in the year 2564, there's apparently just like a brick wall, and nobody can travel past that, and they're trying to figure out why.
Here we are, the end of the universe.
They believe the disconnect is somewhere around this time, and they're trying to figure out where that disconnect happens in all the world lines that creates that. He believes a nuclear weapon was set off by Iraq in the Middle East in a war with Israel that might have something to do that damaged the timeline. He states in his original Facts to Art that he's going to test his theory and he'll figure it out and pray that they discover a reason why there's no apparent future after 2564. Now, remember when I mentioned a IBM 5100 is one of the reasons that he came back? Well, the IBM has a unique ability to emulate APL and basic programming languages that could prevent a Unix timeout in the year 2038. This wasn't a well-known feature and wasn't even advertised in the system. This was known as the year 2038 problem. Think of Y2K, but later? Sorry, that wasn't creative at all. Many digital systems store and calculate the number of seconds that have passed since the year 1970, January 1st, storing them as a 32-bit integer. Side fact, this is one of the ways that they actually found the original locations of the Backrooms, which is an RC car store in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. This could only continue until the January 1st, 2038, similar to the Y2K problem when the digital calendar would be reset and interpreted as 1901. Now, a lot of people actually said that wasn't that well kept of a secret. At the very least, John would have had to have been in the IT industry to know this feature. A lot of people were pretty evenly split between John stans and John deniers. Jumping to March 24th, 2001, the Titor made his last post. I will be leaving this world line shortly, and this will be my final post. There are only a handful of people who will know exactly when I'll be leaving, and I'm sure they will let you know when I'm gone. In the last few days, I have found your choices of topics quite interesting from the objective viewpoint that I think it collectively answers one of your own questions. If time travel is real, where are all the time travelers in the past? I have stated that, quite frankly, you all scare the hell out of me, and I'm sure other temporal drivers would feel the same. But now I have an expanded explanation with 2 examples. A while ago, on one of the posts, I relayed an experience I had with my parents while we were driving down a highway. Every now and then we would pass someone who was in obvious distress. I was amazed that so many people could pass them by without stopping to help. Their explanation was fear. The risk of helping someone was too great, and with today's technology, they probably had a cell phone. If they didn't, the walk to the gas station would be good for them and teach them a lesson for running out of gas. The other example is the plight of the homeless. When you pass them as an individuals on the street, I see the way people selectively choose an alternative path to avoid them. Those 2 examples best define why time travelers do not show themselves. In trying to help you, we put ourselves at great risks, and there's really no point to it. We know the nature of time dictates that traveling between exact world lines is impossible. Therefore, the only results we will see will be the ones we stay to see. Since Worldline's outcomes and events are infinite, we have better things to do. When I arrive in the new 1998 Worldline on my way home, I could easily start all of this again and continue to go through the same conversations with all of the same people. However, I already know you won't pay attention or believe me because we've already been through it on this Worldline. Besides, I think the walk to the gas station will do you some good. I also want to thank Pamela for helping me with the email and everyone else who asked intelligent and insightful questions. I have learned a great deal. My parting thought revolves around something JC has been harping on since day one. No, I don't have a secret agenda, but I have been paying a great deal of attention to your Worldline. My interaction with you was not a direct mission parameter, but it was a secondary mission protocol based to standing orders given to all temporal drivers. That secondary objective is to basically gather as much information on that Worldline based on a set of observable variables when we first arrive. Your Worldline met those conditions. What amazes me is why no one here wonders why Y2K didn't hit them at all. Bring a gas can with you when the car dies on the side of the road. Farewell, John. And with that, John Titor was gone. But his story would continue. Now, like anything that makes you go, maybe, possibly. But who was he? What was all this going on? Who are some of these people that he mentioned, like Pamela? Well, let's get into some of the cast and possibly some of the culprits that might actually have been John Titor. So let's go over the first one, Pamela. Pamela was mentioned in his goodbye letter. Pamela was a user on the forums who developed a relationship with John and said they talked a lot in private. John famously told Pamela that he would give her a secret song as a code in case he ever came back. Reminds me of John. In April of '98, Pamela Moore had a dream driving in a car with a man traveling through time. When she encountered Titor on the forums, she pursued him with, detailed questions looking for deeper truth. Titor then described time traveling with his Chevy, stopping around April of '98. It was this detail that won Pam over, and they began communicating on a private forum. Supposedly in 2016, Pamela received a package, including a letter from John Titor's mother himself, and an album and a CD. Because, sure, whatever the track list on that album must have been fire as fuck.
Hey, you guys mind if I put in my mixtape?
Skeptics point to Pamela's concern as a cautionary tale for parasocial relationships, as John became famous on the forums at the time, and she could have just taken the moment to just go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over him.
Jesus Christ, parasocial! You need to log off! Jesus Christ!
Another player in this classic Shakespearean time travel play without dolphins is Marlon Pullman, a man who, by all means, is not a dumb dude. He was a software engineer, had many books published on the topic, so he actually would have understood some computer knowledge, as well as the IBM thing. He also tried to patent the time machine schematics that John posted on the time-traveling forums. This made people suspicious that he might actually have been John, but Marlon would deny it, saying it was just for fun and a hobby to keep himself occupied while he battled Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2002. To quote Marlon, "I had nothing better to do." I've said the same thing when I've been asked why I was at your mom's house. The next player we think may be involved, or even John himself. This was a man named Oliver Williams. After the Coast to Coast forums went down, Oliver made a site called JohnTitor.com and essentially saved all the John Titor info and got this shot into the mainstream, and because of this, a lot of people think Oliver was John. The thing that made people really skeptic about it was there was a book by the quote-unquote John Titor Foundation, which he posted on the site. Oliver gave an update stating that more info on the time machine was in there, and it was supposedly signed by John's mom? In the interview about the book, Oliver brings up the name Larry Haber, saying this was the eternity associated with the book, and was adamant that the author had the original copyright to the story. Larry Haber was an entertainment lawyer who worked for Disney, so I'm sure he is willing to break a few kneecaps, so I'm going to be nice when I'm talking about Larry.
I found a knife!
Fun fact about Larry, he famously was one of the first families to live in a place called Celebration, Florida, a famous Disney-made city that, at the time of this happening, had a population of about 3,000. Bonus fact, the IP address from where the John Titor was posted on the post-to-post forums and the time travel forums were not from Tampa, which people originally insisted where John Titor was from, but from Celebration, Florida, making him prime suspect. When asked about it, Larry just said that he was hired by John's mother. Speaking of enthusiasts, we also have an investigator named John Rasmus, who has been hunting him for 15 plus years. And in 2009, it was Rasmus that actually posted some of his findings in a blog called The Rasmus Report, which, honestly, cool name for a movie. The report listed 88 names of forum users that he believes were fake accounts created by Titor to help sell the story. These accounts were only active during the time that Titor was on the forums and could have helped build a community. He even goes on to name a few specific people that he believes were John Titor, or at least that he can't rule out. Most specifically, Oliver Williams and Larry Haber. Speaking of Larry, on an Italian show called Voyager, no, not Star Trek, Janeway would have just shot him. Hashtag Janeway supremacy. The show had a private investigator look into not just Larry, but his whole family, specifically his brother Richard, who was an IT technician and would have knowledge of the IBM 5100 secret features, similar to how John Titor did. Suspicion growing, they did what any intelligent person would do. They did a YouTube interview. The channel Where is John Titor held an interview with Larry and Richard on May 20th, 2010. They really just denied the claims on the Where is John Titor page, more or less just saying, nope, wasn't me, pinky promise. Larry even mentioned that he had a goodbye video from John Titor, but in standard lawyer nonsense pulled the I can't release it. Also, Rasmus actually believes that Larry's brother, not Richard, but his other brother, Maury Haber, could be Titor, as his speech and post patterns match exactly to Titor's. You think that's the end of the story? Well, buckle your ass, because it's about to get weirder. Y'all ever played any ARGs? Any alternate reality games? Enter Ong's Hat, one of the first well-known ARGs from the 1980s. This was a work of different media storytelling, and in the 80s they used a bulletin board systems, zines, CD-ROMs, print, radio, TV. The creator Joseph Maney stated that in the late 90s and onward, people were coming less and less to it for the story and the mystery, and more for the conspiracy theories, thinking that it was more than just a game. So he began getting really annoyed, and he felt these people were ruining the game. So he thought that'd be fun to troll people and created John Titor. To do this with other collaborators on the Project Archivist podcast on episode 138, he admits that he did all this, even the book. I mean, I could end it here, but actually, Mania actually would contradict himself quite a bit, stating specifically, none of us were paying attention or curating after this point. Sometime in 2000 is when we stopped doing it. Now, even though the forums actually were 2001, so either he misspoke or he just didn't do it. Even in 2018, we were still getting new information into the Titorverse. A man named Michael Saab, with the help of forensic linguists, including one of the linguists who helped investigate the Jack the Ripper letters, Andre Anini, and some grad students helped him investigate. They came to the conclusion that Titor wasn't a time traveler.
Sure, I could have told you that.
I ran features that involved taking the top 100 most frequent word sequences of 2 to 5 words, then taking punctuation and taking average word length for each text, sentence, and paragraph length. All of the markers were found to work in stylometry, the discipline that studies the quantification of style. So you get all these measurements for each text, and what you want to find out is if there is any differences in the way all the suspects behave. Say they all have the same average sentence length. So I ran tests of significance for variables. You take all the ones that are significantly different, you test statistically whether Maury Haber has a higher average sentence length than another suspect. If it does, you take that marker and put it in a basket. If not, exclude it. So what did Dr. Nini find? First, stating that this is only one study, not a group, so it's not conclusive. That being said, also none of the authors' styles overlapped, meaning that Matheny, Haber, or Williams, etc., out of all these people, are not ruled out. The only one who overlapped with Titor was Maury Haber. This doesn't mean that he's Tabor, but it does tell you out of the pool, he is the most likely. Dr. Nini specifically wanted to state as well, along with these findings, that there's not enough conclusive evidence pointing to Maury Haber as the author of the John Titor post, though Nini specifically also wanted to state this does not abdicate the Habers of responsibility, but to clarify that the evidence against them is not conclusive. There's a lot of people who believe that Titor was a time traveler and could be the reason some massive disasters didn't happen, like why Y2K didn't end the world and why World War III hasn't happened yet. While it could have been an elaborate hoax, he did give hope to some. Something to focus on. Push forward. Push forward knowing things aren't going to be as bad, or that we can change what was to be. Maybe even leaving a message that we can be kinder to each other, or not to rely on each other for answers that we can get ourselves. We should help ourselves and focus on the future. Moving forward always, and while the roads of the future can be rough, you'll get there. And just in case, don't forget to bring your gas can. Hey kids, Lorlock here. Glad you made it to the end. This one was kind of an interesting one because I initially did this as kind of like a stopgap in between this one and a longer project. Turns out this one ended up being long, so welcome to Forced Research number 2. Alright, now I want to do some of my Patreon shoutouts. I do appreciate everything you guys do, and like the fact that anyone is even like in this blows my mind. And of course, first I'd like to thank some of my new members. I'd like to thank people like Jen, Dane, Royal YGO, Amber Shaper, DoubleClick01, Gooseball, Panda Snoots, Meow Bubbles, Robo Sketchy, Olivia Oblivion, and Brittany. So lucky to have you guys here. This video will be going up a little bit early for you guys, but I appreciate everything you guys do for me. And if you'd like to become a Patreon member and just get a shout out, you can go to my Patreon, go to the free section, sign up as a member, and you'll get a shout out at the end of each one of my videos. Alright, so I'd like to thank you guys once again. I wanted to keep this outro brief, just like I wanted to keep this video brief, but fat chance. But that'll do it for today's episode, and join us next week where we try to annoy our local ATF. But again, as always, I appreciate you all for coming, and I appreciate you guys for showing up. Let me know in the comments what you guys would like, and what time period you guys would travel to. Anyway, I'm Lorlock, and as always, cheers.